Britain once had more lorry builders than you could count on both hands twice over. Nearly all of them are gone now, and their names went with them. However, some of those forgotten firms built the strangest machines ever to run on British tarmac. 10 of them, starting with a lorry named after a bird of bad luck, number 10. The Rutland, New Addington, on the edge of Croydon, is not where you expect to find a lorry factory. But from 1947, a man called Frank Manton was quietly building heavy goods vehicles there, first at Croydon, then at the Rutland Works on Vulcan Way. The company traded under a few names over the years, Wagon Rutland and then Motor Traction Limited, and the lorries themselves wore whichever badge suited the customer. In Britain, they were Rutlands. Abroad, plenty of them left the works badged as MTN, because a British lorry with an unfamiliar name had an easier time slipping past import quotas in certain markets. Clever and slightly cheeky. What Manton actually built was a made-to-measure lorry. There was no real production line in the Bedford or Leyland sense. You told the works what you hauled, and they assembled a chassis around it using bought-in Perkins engines and components from firms like AEC. Anything from a 1-ton van up to a 4-axle 8-legger, bonneted or forward control, whichever you preferred. The model names are the part everyone remembers. Rutland went with birds. There was the eagle. There was the toucan. And with a sense of timing you could not invent, there was the albatross. Somebody in that office genuinely sat down, looked at a list of birds, and chose the one sailors have considered a curse for 300 years. The firm exhibited at the Commercial Motor Show in 1956, sold chassis into South America, Portugal, and Spain through the Mack distributor in Madrid, and even produced a 30-foot Clipper coach chassis. Then the shareholders voted to wind the whole thing up in 1958, an albatross round the neck, right to the end. Number 9. The Bristol. Here is a lorry that existed because the government told a bus company to make it. Bristol had been going since 1874, building trams before it built anything with a steering wheel, and by the 1930s it belonged to the Thomas Tilling Group. Then came nationalization in 1948, and suddenly the Bristol Works at Brislington found itself inside a state-owned transport empire. That empire had a problem. British road services had swallowed thousands of hauliers, but wartime production and the export drive meant there simply were not enough heavy lorries to go round. Plenty of medium wagons had come in with the nationalized firms. Big stuff was in short supply, so in 1950, an order went to Bristol for 204 axle rigids at the then maximum 22 tons gross. The result was the HG6L, a 30-foot chassis, swept up behind the cab so the body could sit without long runners underneath, low-revving Leyland or Gardner power, and a glass fiber impregnated cab. Later came the HA6G, a 4x2 Arctic unit rated at 24 tons, which started pushing the 8-wheeler off the night trunk work because you could drop a trailer and go. They ran from 1952 right through to 1964. In that faded Ayers red you still see on preserved BRS motors at rallies today. And that is the strange part. Bristol built a proper, well-engineered heavy lorry for over a decade, and it had essentially one customer. You could not walk into a dealer and order one. When BRS was partly denationalized and started buying off the shelf again, the Bristol lorry simply stopped, absorbed into British Leyland along with everything else. Number 8. The Jen-Tug. Say the name Jensen and you think of the Interceptor, the FF. Big American V8s in a West Bromwich body. What you probably do not picture is a tiny articulated tug shunting parcels around a goods yard. But that is exactly what Jensen was building. And the commercial vehicle side of the business is a large part of why the car side survived at all. It started in the late 1930s when Jensen began producing commercial vehicles under the JNSN badge, including a run of lightweight aluminum alloy lorries for the Reynolds Tube Company. Out of that came the prototype for a small articulated unit. The war interrupted things, with the factory turning out tank turrets, ambulances, and fire engines. When peace came, George Reiki and his son Colin joined the workforce, reworked the design, and series production of the Jen-Tug began in 1947. The cab was aluminium, drawn up by Eric Neal, the same designer who later penned the Interceptor and the 541. Power came from a Ford 1172 side-valve engine, making all of 30 horsepower. From 1951, you got the Austin A40 engine instead, which lifted it to 40 and let the little thing carry more. Jensen offered a choice of 14 standard trailers, flatbeds, and Pantechnicons included. There was even an electric version, the Gen Helix, developed with Hindle, Smart & Company in 1948, of which only a few dozen were ever made. Production ran until 1956. Today, the sports cars are worth fortunes. The Jen-Tugs that kept the lights on at West Bromwich are down to a tiny handful of survivors. Number 7. The Sentinel Diesel. Sentinel of Shrewsbury were the last great British steam wagon builders. Their S-type standards, 4-, 6-, and 8-wheelers, sold around 3,750 units, which makes them the biggest selling steam lorry ever built. Beautiful things. Underfloor engine, longitudinal crankshaft, overhead worm drive. But diesel was coming, and Sentinel came late to it. In August 1946, they launched the 44DV, a 7 to 8 ton four-wheeler with a 5.78-liter four-cylinder engine. 3 years later came the 64DV with 9.12 liters and 6 cylinders. Both were mounted underfloor, which was pure Sentinel thinking carried over from steam. Flat floor, full-width bench seat, excellent visibility. Commercial Motor tested one and reported that even with the engine tucked under the boards, access for maintenance was genuinely good, and it returned just under 12 miles per gallon at over 12 tons gross. So what went wrong? The early pre-chamber engines used glow plugs and were awkward to start in cold weather. They overheated, they drank fuel, and the underfloor mounting arrangement turned out to be fragile enough that on some vehicles the engine actually sagged in its mountings, with a few reportedly dropping out altogether. Ricardo redesigned things for direct injection by 1952, but the reputation had gone. Lorry production stopped in 1956, and Rolls-Royce took over the factory. Sentinel's main dealer bought up the remaining stock and carried on building them under the TVW name in Warrington until the parts ran out in 1961. And the punchline? Sentinel were still shipping around 100 steam wagons to Argentina as late as 1950. Their steam outlasted their diesel. Ambitions number 6. The Rowe Hillmaster Cornwall built exactly one lorry mark, and this is it. Maurice Rowe ran a garage and coach business in the village of Dobwalls, near Liskeard, from 1946. Post-war shortages meant he could not buy a new coach for love nor money, so he did what a certain type of West Country engineer does. He built his own. At the 1952 Commercial Motor Show at Earl's Court, he took a liking to the new Meadows 4DC engine, had one delivered, and designed a chassis around it. The first attempt was front-engined. He then decided underfloor was the future, redesigned the lot, and announced the revised chassis in September 1954. That first vehicle carried a Whitson body and went straight into service with his own coach fleet. The lorries that followed were built around the West Country, and nothing else, light in weight because Cornish bridges and Cornish work demanded it. Narrow cabs, because Cornish lanes did not care about your turning circle, and low gear ratios because of hills like Porlock. Later chassis were built to order with Leyland, AEC, or Gardner engines, and Jennings cabs. Somerset Haulier Arthur Duckett ran 2. Some went to Canada and New Zealand. In total, roughly 120 were built. And then, in 1960, with the company sitting on a debt of about £3,000, the bank called in the receivers. £3,000. The business was wound up in 1963, and perhaps 15 Hillmasters survive today. Number 5. The AEC Mandator V8. Work started at AEC's Southall plant in 1962 on something no British manufacturer had really attempted: a compact 12-liter V8 diesel designed to give 250 horsepower with room to grow towards 350 for the demands everyone could see coming in the 1970s. When it was launched in 1968 in the Mandator, it was the flagship of the whole operation. Drivers absolutely loved it. On full song, the engine note was closer to a racing car than a lorry, and there are stories from the A1 of fully freighted Mandator V8s pulling out and passing cars on the hills. Nothing else on British roads sounded or went like it. Operators felt rather differently. The big bore and short stroke meant low-end torque was modest, around 580 pounds-foot at 1600 revs, so you had to keep it spinning, and keeping it spinning made it run hot. Southall's own engineers had flagged serious shortcomings on the test bench, with the engines having barely 300 hours of running behind them. British Leyland pushed it into production anyway. One trade press tester took a V8 out of Southall towards the M1 and pulled a liner clean out of the block before he even reached the start of the route. The splitter switch was so sensitive that a glancing knock could over-rev the engine and put rods through the block. Some fleets simply derated the fuel pumps, partly to save the engine, partly to save their drivers' licenses. Somewhere between 300 and 350 were built before it was withdrawn from sale. Only a handful run today. Number 4. The Rotinoff Atlantic. George Rotinoff was an émigré engineer who started his industrial life converting surplus Sherman tanks into bulldozers. In 1952, he set up Rotinoff Motors at Colnbrook, near Slough, and started building some of the heaviest road tractors this country has ever produced. First came the Atlantic, rated at 140 tons gross. Then the Super Atlantic, a 6x4 ballast tractor built for work in the 200-ton region, powered by a supercharged Rolls-Royce 8-cylinder engine of over 330 horsepower, running on Kirkstall axles with a 6-speed main box and a 3-speed auxiliary for the really nasty stuff. Roughly 35 were built in total. The Swiss Army took a batch and used them to haul Centurion tanks on Scheuerle trailers right through until 1991. Two longer, lighter Viscounts went to Australia to pull cattle road trains for the Vesti organization. And one, registration RPY 767, went to Sunter Brothers of North Allerton in 1957, where it was put to work moving heat exchangers for Bradwell in Essex, Britain's first nuclear power station, on loads recorded as the heaviest hauled by road in this country at the time. Sunters kept it in service until 1974. One heavy haulage engineer, asked about it years later, gave what might be the highest compliment available in that trade. He said it would outpull any Scammell. George Rotinoff died in May 1959, just as the reputation was building. The rights went to Lowmount, then to Atkinson, and the name faded. That Sunter Brothers machine is now in the Science Museum collection. Number 3. The Commer with 6 pistons and 3 cylinders. Ride that again, because it is not a mistake. The Commer TS3, known everywhere it worked as the Knocker, is probably the strangest engine ever fitted to a British production lorry. Development began at the Humber plant at Stoke-Aldermore in 1945 under Chief Engineer Eric Coy, with a design team of about 7 people. Production moved to the Tilling-Stevens works at Maidstone in 1954. And for the record, the TS does not stand for Tilling-Stevens. It stands for two-stroke. The layout goes like this: 3 horizontal cylinders, 2 pistons in each cylinder, crowns facing each other, 6 pistons in total. 1 piston handles exhaust, the other handles air, and the exhaust piston runs with a slight lead, so its port seals as fresh air rushes in. Both sets of pistons drive a single crankshaft underneath, through connecting rods and rockers, which is unusual even among opposed piston engines, because almost everyone else used 2 crankshafts. There is no cylinder head, no camshaft, no valves at all. A big Roots blower on the front forces air in 3.25 liters gave 105 horsepower, and 270 pounds-foot of torque, later lifted to 117 and 310. From an engine smaller than a modern family car. Because it sat under the cab floor, Roots could delete the bonnet entirely and build Britain's first short cab lorry. And you could reach the pistons through panels in the cab sides without lifting the engine out. And the sound. Anyone who worked around them will tell you that you heard a knocker coming from a street away. Number 2. The Shelvoke and Drury Freighter. Imagine climbing into a lorry cab and finding no steering wheel at all. That was Letchworth Garden City, 1922. Harry Shelvoke and James Drury were the general manager and chief engineer at Laker Motors, and between them, they came up with a design for an extremely unconventional light lorry. They built the prototype in Harry's barn. Laker were not interested, so in October 1922, the pair set up on their own with about 30 employees. The freighter had 2 tillers. One steered it, the other controlled the gears and the clutch. There was no steering wheel and no clutch pedal. The wheels were tiny, solid-tired at first, which gave the thing a beautifully low loading height, and the whole vehicle was kept as simple as it possibly could be. A canopy over the driver cost 25 pounds extra. The advertising slogan was 2 tons carried at the cost of 1, and the claim was that anybody could learn to drive one in about half an hour. Early customers included the LMS Railway, Carter Patterson, Express Dairy, and J. Lyons. Then the council spotted it. That low loading height made it ideal for refuse work, and the first municipal order came from Deptford in September 1923. By the end of 1924, the 100th vehicle was built, and 35 were already on municipal duties. The 1,000th followed in October 1932. Around 50 chassis even got bus bodies, most famously the tramcar fleet at Worthing. Tiller freighters were built right through until 1955, the last one for St. Helens. And during the war, that little Letchworth factory built complete submarines for the Royal Navy No. 1, the Scammell 100-tonner. In 1929, Kitson of Leeds had a problem. They were building steam locomotives for export, and getting an out-of-gauge locomotive from Leeds across the Pennines to Liverpool docks was close to impossible. The job went to Marston Road Services of Lightbody Street, Liverpool, and Ernest Marston went to Scammell at Watford with an idea. Build me a lorry that can carry 100 tons. Scammell's director of engineering, Percy Hugh, handed it to a young designer named Oliver Danson North, the same man who later gave us the mechanical horse and the Pioneer. What they produced was, at the time, the biggest lorry in the world. Chassis numbers 1428 and 1429. 2 were built. That is the entire production run. The first, KD 9168, was delivered to Marston in January 1930. Chain drive, solid tires, a 4-cylinder petrol engine, and a thirst so severe that 3 fuel tanks holding over 100 gallons between them still were not really enough. The carrier bogie could be reconfigured between 65 and 100 tons depending on the job. The second machine cost 3,100 pounds, and with its trailer, the bill came to 4,900. In 1930, that was several houses. They spent decades crawling out-of-gauge locomotives to the docks at walking pace. There is a photograph of KD 9168 in Bootle in 1947, hauling a 75-ton Liberation-class locomotive from the Vulcan foundry. Both later ran for Pickfords, the second one earning the nickname Leaping Lena. And here is the best part. Both of them still exist. KD 9168 is at the British Commercial Vehicle Museum at Leyland, and Leaping Lena survives in private hands in Hertfordshire. 10 lorries, and not one of them built by a firm that still exists. That is the thing about British lorry building. It was never one industry. It was dozens of small engineering outfits scattered from Letchworth to Dobwalls to Shrewsbury. Most of them run by people who saw a problem on their own patch and simply built the answer themselves. Some of those answers were brilliant. Some were mad. A few were both at once. They did not all fail because they were bad. Rowe went under owing £3,000. Rotinoff lost the man who was the company. Bristol built a fine lorry and was allowed exactly one customer. And AEC had an engine that might have worked beautifully if anyone had given it another 2 years. Bad luck, thin margins, and boardroom politics killed far more of these firms than bad engineering ever did. Look at how many of them survive as well. 2 Jen-Tugs, 15 or so Hillmasters. A handful of running Mandator V8s, both 100-tonners, which is 100% of the production run, and somehow that feels about right. Next time you are at a rally and you see something you cannot identify, walk over and ask. The owner will almost certainly know the whole story, and there is a decent chance nobody has asked them in months.